This channel is part of the History Hit network.
Nearly 2,000 years ago, somewhere around here, the population of a Roman city would meet to feast and worship their gods, because we think that this was the precinct of a huge pagan temple. 100 yards away and 1,000 years later, 5 monks sent over from Italy set up the first Franciscan monastery in Britain. It was on this small marshy island, close to the shrine of Thomas a Becket in the cathedral over there. And up here, we hope to find part of the medieval construction industry that supported the huge growth in the building of religious houses, as this historic city became a world-famous centre for pilgrimage and worship. Over the next 3 days, we're here in Canterbury to uncover those pagan and Christian sanctuaries, and hopefully come face to face with the pilgrims who established them. We've come on our own pilgrimage to a settlement that grew from a tribal stronghold in the Iron Age into a major Roman city. Then by the Middle Ages, Canterbury had become the most important English destination for pilgrims for 800 years. Professor, what exactly was a pilgrim?
A sort of religious tourist, I think would be the best way to describe it. Somebody who went to the shrines where the saints were kept, probably as a vow or, you know, to get a cure or something like that.
And how long would they have been on the road?
Oh, they could have been on the road years, but, you know, 3 months, 6 months or whatever.
I hope that doesn't happen to us. Trinity, you're going to be digging up Christians?
That's right, churches, chapels, maybe even dead pilgrims. Should be brilliant.
And you're going to be digging up Romans, Phil?
I am really looking forward to it.
So you should be, because assisting you this weekend, we've got the wonderful Lisa Tarbuck.
Good day, sir.
Why are you doing time team?
Well, it was actually a dream job for me, so I'm very glad to be asked. I've always admired you on it, and I like a bit of art. I like a good dig, and I want to man a pagan hole.
Well, here's the men for a pagan hole. Stuart and John, we've got geophys and surveying sorted out, and we've got Sandy Toksvig. Sandy,
darling,
this year you are being banished outside the town where you're going to excavate a medieval industrial estate.
It's good, because I've never admired you. Are you staying in a town?
Yeah.
That's good, because there's a hairdresser's just up on the right.
Oh, look, a bit of grease, and what have you got? Billy Fury. Come on, let's see if we can get the best beds. We've got 3 days to uncover as much as we can at 3 separate sites, and if that's not enough, we're doing it live. Our first dig's at Blue Boy Yard, just minutes from the cathedral and within the temple precinct of the Roman city. This rectangular courtyard covered 3 acres, and our goal is to find the temple building itself. And after their chariot had completed a few circuits of ground radar, geophys were feeling very confident.
We seem to have a solid surface across the whole area at about 1 metre down.
Well, if we're looking for the temple, have you got that?
Well, what happens when we go deeper below that solid surface?
Oh, something's still
we
there.
still get things in that area there. So I think that's where we should start.
Can you drop us down on that?
Of course I can drop it down.
What a
on
stupid question.
Over here.
Honestly, you boys.
Our rookie archaeologist can't wait to get started. Roman Canterbury had been obscured by centuries of continual redevelopment, but German bombing revealed fabulous sights and finds just a few feet below ground. Lisa went on a whistle-stop tour, beginning with the Roman baths.
Good day, sir. Now, you've promised me Roman remains galore, something very interesting, but we're in a bookshop.
We are. My favourite place. However, look over here.
Wow. May I go in?
Please do, yes. Go on. So this is the caldarium, the sweat baths, and you can see that the hot gases are being directed behind you in this direction to another room, presumably a tepidarium, a
slightly
warm room.
Cooler than this one.
Slightly cooler, that's right. And then there's another room behind us. So there's still a lot of these baths surviving. Right, we've been to the baths, and so now we're off to the theatre.
In here?
In here.
Ooh.
History Hit is an award-winning streaming platform built by history fans for history fans. Enjoy our rich library of documentaries covering key events and locations of the medieval period. History Hit's medieval offering features leading historians such as Dan Jones, Eleanor Janega and Kat Jarman. Not only that, but we've a rich library of audio documentaries covering every period of history through our network of podcasts. Sign up now for a free trial, and Chronicle fans get 50% off their first 3 months. Just be sure to use the code Chronicle at checkout.
Ooh, this is the largest building in Roman Britain.
Really?
Yeah. It's a monster. We're looking at the outside curving wall. You can see the curve of masonry as it spins round. It stood 90 feet high.
Wow.
It's a huge structure that would have contained or housed something like 3,000 people watching some great event in the stage area or the orchestra.
So, I've been and had a bath. I've been to the theatre. What now?
We're going to see a Roman house now. Not just an ordinary house, but a special house. So special, we built a museum over it. The front door of this great building would have been just here. And so these beautiful mosaics punctuated a corridor, this wide corridor, that gave onto a whole series of rooms behind us.
So this really reeks of opulence, doesn't it?
This is the home of someone very special within Canterbury, one of the ruling elite.
And this is just one of the things that's going on only 8 foot below modern-day Canterbury.
Back in Blue Boy Yard, we're only 3 feet below ground.
Yeah,
You got a minute?
I certainly have.
Look what I got down here.
Oh my
Gravel.
God.
Is that our temple precinct?
That is our temple precinct.
Brilliant.
Well done, that man. I was beginning to
You're
think...
really pleased about this.
Yes.
How about this then, Lisa?
Well-
We've actually got the precinct.
That is where the Romans walked.
That is exactly where the Roman walk.
Yes.
Look, you can see that the gravel is rising up to there, and you can follow it all the way around there, around that edge, and around there. So basically, where you're actually squat is about that far above the temple precinct.
That is music to my ear, Mr. Phil.
The uppermost layer here,
Yeah.
the bit that's just that much beneath your feet, is full, we hope, of architectural fragments from the temple. Because we're so close to the temple, I'm sure it's near
It
here.
would have to be, wouldn't it? It would make sense.
What-
If they quarried the theatre, they might have done the same to the temple.
They knocked it down, certainly, and they pulled down all the porticos and they destroyed all the small shrines that were in this enclosure. And all the resultant rubble was laid down as this late courtyard surface. And what we've got so far from various earlier excavations is this layer of architectural fragments.
So,
Bits of
the
brick,
sooner we
tile.
can clear off that
First
little
bit.
bit
So it's-
beneath your feet,
We're gonna work
the
all
sooner
night.
we should
You
get
want
it.
me out the pit then?
No, I don't. We've got as much labour as we
Trial
can get.
going.
So what's the significance of the precinct in relation to the temple?
The temple is important architecturally, and we might find a cult statue in that, but the real point is if you think of a Christian church, which is what we're all familiar with, all the ritual activity goes on inside a church. Well, the Roman pagan temple precinct is completely different. Most of the ritual activity goes on outside, in the precinct area. So if you look at all these people milling around here in the precinct, that's where we might find dedications, evidence of dedications. We might find altars, we might find traces of sacrifice that will tell us all about the pagan cult and its operation.
Phil's finding large holes dug into the surface of the temple precinct, going right down beneath the Roman levels. And they're very smelly.
Because you've got to remember that people have been living in Canterbury, well, obviously before the Romans, but they've certainly been living on the street frontage there, and what they've been doing is dumping all their waste in their back gardens, and so we're awash with pits.
Yes.
And what we've got to do is dig these things out, get the finds, date them in sequence, and actually it'll tell us so much about what the people are doing.
A mixture of finds is already coming out.
We've got a tribal coin, look at that.
Coin of Cynobelin, Iron Age coin,
Cymbeline. Yeah, we'll
struck
find
in
out more about that.
Camulodunum, especially for Kent.
Really?
Yeah.
You didn't tell me that. Right, what's
And here,
this?
Roman pottery, but not ordinary Roman pottery. This is some of the latest Roman pottery you get in Roman Britain. Grog-tempered ware from the surface, the latest surface of the Roman courtyard.
What would that have held? Something like that? Quite sturdy, isn't it?
It's a nice little bowl that you'd have had your porridge in.
So much material's coming out of the cesspit, Phil's over the moon. The fact that there's nothing Roman doesn't seem to bother him at all.
Phil! Hello, Mick. I haven't seen you since yesterday. I need an update. Be prepared for a bit of a whiff, though. Oh, blimey, yeah. God. And look, wow! Look at this. I mean, we got leather, we got textiles, we got a beautiful little piece of ribbon, we got a boot in there. Yeah. We got so many fruit stones, we got bottles, we even got human hair. Well, what sort of date are we talking about? We're talking 18th century. Good I mean, Lord. This is an enormous cesspit. It whiffs, doesn't it? Yeah. Now you see why it's called a cesspit. What other periods have you got then? Well, this is the important bit. The actual gravel surface. That is the temple precinct, and you see above it. You see where that brown sample tube is in the section. That is the dark earth that is above the major temple surface. We get that in all the Roman towns, don't we? That's it. It seems to be that they brought a lot of debris and soil in to make gardens, really.
Forensic archaeologist Margaret Cox has recovered the human hair from Blue Boy Yard.
Very tempting. And hopefully...
See if we can get some of the dirt out of it.
There we go.
Just amazing, isn't it, that it's in such good condition after all these years?
It's incredible. I expected it to be very brittle.
Yeah,
if anything.
Yeah, I think that's right.
You know,
you would expect that, wouldn't you? It's coming up really well, isn't it? Just a little bit more to come off.
The longer the hair's under the ground, the redder it becomes as the pigments are broken down by the soil. The further down they get, the earlier the finds, but still nothing Roman. The dustbins of 16th and 17th century Canterbury tell it all.
These people were living off the fat of the land. Goose.
Fantastic.
How often do you get to eat goose?
Look, loads of mutton,
Not only were they eating well, they were drinking off the fat of the land as well.
Brandy and gin, lovely.
The common staple.
And if they overdid it, they were down to the apothecary for a little bit of a remedy for that. Or maybe that they just had a quiet smoke and forgot about it.
Drowned their sorrows and smoked away. Fantastic.
But they had wealth. My God, they had wealth. Look, they had family heirlooms going back from the 16th century.
Yeah.
Beautiful tin glazed pots, right up to the more modern stuff, 1800s creamwares. So they were really wealthy people.
They had a few
didn't they? Really good lifestyle.
Although the cesspits are just beginning to tantalise us with a few Roman fragments of marble, limestone and tile, there's real doubt about where the temple really is. This is the base of a huge medieval pot.
It's coming. Just let it rock and... Bit of rock and roll. I think we got it.
Stuart's been poring over the maps. Roman Canterbury was developed over the earlier Iron Age stronghold, and he's discovered that during their occupation, the Roman street plans changed.
And the most exciting thing about this is this white line.
Why is that exciting, Stuart?
It's exciting to me because this white line represents a little lane just next to Blue Boy Yard called Hawk's Lane. Yeah. And I think that's part of this pattern of Roman roads, in effect, through the town, and it defines the north edge of the temple precinct complex, which is not where it was thought to be.
Right, but our site is in the top corner of that area now, isn't it?
That's
Which
right.
is presumably means we're not really the centre of activities.
I think to be nearer the centre, the whole thing needs to come further south.
So at least Stuart believes we're close to an important building, and the finds support that.
It's all roof of tile and floor tile. There's masses of it. It just shows that when they filled up the pit, they were in the vicinity of a very, very large Roman building, and there's more. Because not only do we get the tile in the pit, we also got that enormous lump of tufa.
Tufa, Paul? What's this?
Tufa. It's a lightweight Roman building material, usually used in the vaults of large Roman buildings. So
it's all pointing towards the temple,
We're getting
isn't it?
there.
Anything else?
Here, bits of Boulogne limestone.
Oh, that's
now,
quite
these,
flash.
It's very flash, and may have come from one of these, a Corinthian capital. Fantastic stuff.
So where is this temple? We know the theatre stood here, and we think the precinct was here. So the temple might have stood in line with the theatre here. So somewhere a Roman temple still lies, waiting to be found. In part 2, we begin a 3-day search for Canterbury's medieval tile industry. The second site in our 3-day live dig is to the north of Canterbury on Tyler Hill. This was a huge medieval industrial site making roof and floor tiles, which came to light again after German bombs fell. Resistance tests show a huge anomaly on the hillside. Could this be a tile kiln or just another bomb? Watching her back in the open field is Sandy Toxvig.
Now, this may look like a fabulous place for a picnic, but it wouldn't be, because normally there's bulls here. Not today. There's just lots of men with pickaxes. And that's because we had the most fabulous geophysics results. We had this great big blob, and where there's a blob, it's a very good idea to start a trench. Now, we started early this morning, but I have to say, things did not go all that smoothly.
Looking at the geophysics, everyone felt that the archaeology must be just below the surface. So we started digging by hand. It was too tough for even the hardest hackers of the turf. After some frantic telephone calls and a couple of hours, we secured the dinkiest digger you could lay your hands on. Oops. Oh dear. The field turned out to be baked London clay. Nothing special there, as we were looking for a clay tile factory. Then a big digger arrived. After a couple of scoots, everything was resolved. You can't get away from broken roof tiles. The good news is burnt material is coming up in the rubble.
Now, I don't want to get overexcited, Mick, but it looks very much to me like you found what we were looking for.
You can get really excited. See this dark edge here?
Yeah.
And that red stripe? That's actually the edge of the kiln. So the inside of the kiln's there. This is the wall coming round right across here.
So we're standing outside at the bottom of the kiln now?
We're sort of at the back of the kiln.
Right, OK.
So you've had so this is the back of the kiln. Come round here, and there's the other wall going off down there.
And it seems to kind of curve in. Does that mean it's like one of those bottle-shaped kilns?
That's what it seems to be looking like. So you'd have the fire down that end, the hearth down that end. It would basically, the wind would blow the smoke and the heat up through the kiln this way and up out the flue at this end.
Because otherwise it seems bizarre to set it on a hill, wouldn't it? But it's for the draft.
It's purely a draft thing, yeah. Well, you can feel the draft coming up now, can't you?
How deep down are you going to go, do you reckon, this wall?
The geophysics seems to point to about 1 metre. So on this end, I think this wall will be 1 metre, 1.20 metres.
Blushing from their early success in finding a roof tile kiln, they're now talking of digging for either the tilers' workshops or the waste pits, all in 3 days.
What would your preference be?
Well, there's another element, which is the dating. We need to do two things. We need to recover what the kiln is actually making, and secondly, we need to get the archaeomagnetic dating secure to work out what date this kiln actually is.
Which sounds to me like you want to find the wasters.
I think that we've so rarely had these kilns come to light, we can't really seal it up for future generations until we fully understand what's there.
Mick?
I'm not that worried at this time, halfway through day one. I'm not worried about the time. I think we've got a lot of time. I think we can do it.
In the 13th century, Tyler Hill flourished with the boom in constructing churches, religious houses and other secular buildings in Canterbury. At the height of its prosperity, many kilns would have been working on this wooded hillside, standing 1 metre above ground and producing thousands of roof tiles, floor tiles and pots every year. Whole families would have operated the kilns, digging the clay and gathering wood for the fires. To try and understand the medieval process, we're going to build our own kiln, and we'll try to recreate some of the decorated floor tile patterns that originated from Tyler Hill, still found in Canterbury Cathedral today.
Mark, I know you said you wanted to show me a floor, but why are we washing it?
Well, it's actually the best way of seeing what these tiles look like, because the lead glaze has worn off and we can see the designs very clearly. There's a dragon here, for example, a castle and a fleur-de-lis just over here.
I can see that it's beautiful. Now, we're in the Corona Chapel in Canterbury Cathedral. What is the significance of it?
This is the holiest of holies, really. This is where the shrine of Thomas à Becket's head was kept. Oh. These tiles were laid around to decorate the floor.
And this floor, Ray, you are going to recreate for us, is that right?
Hopefully we're going to create something similar to this. This is a higgledy-piggledy pattern. What we're going to do is something like this, incorporating the tiles which are made in Tyler Hill, and if everything goes right, that should be ready by Monday.
But you say if it goes right, I mean, it suggests not total confidence.
No, well, the clay can go wrong, the firing can go wrong, the weather can go wrong.
A tall order, and indeed, so is washing this floor. Come on, it's a big building.
So a couple of hours later, Medieval Jim is showing Sandy how to make a Tyler Hill tile.
This is London clay, and it comes from Tyler Hill, probably dug practically underneath my feet. Going to take this. Jim here has pressed it into a form, and I'm going to make my first tile.
That's right. Using this stamp here,
Okay.
if you'd line it up and force it in.
So this is the actual impression.
That's right. That's a terracotta stamp.
Right.
though-
What would it have been normally made of?
I presume wood, really.
What do you think, Mark?
Well, terracotta is easy to make, but it damages very easily, whereas the wooden tiles have much more durability, and we have thousands made from one stamp.
Look, I've made a bit of a mess. This is not very neat and
Well,
tidy.
that's for you then to inlay quite crudely with the white clay by forcing it into the gaps.
So this
So
is
just
going
pushing
to...
it in.
I see.
We're more bothered about the white clay sticking to the rib.
I happen to have a tile here from Tyler Hill itself, and you can actually see the imprint of where the stamp went in.
If Sandy's tile's going to turn out like this medieval beauty, it's got to be cooked at some horrendously high temperatures. Once the kiln's complete, it's time to start stacking the tiles inside.
Looks to me like you've got many more there than you actually need for the floor.
Well, they used to have a 40% failure rate, and so we are expecting that we might have a 40% failure rate.
What sort of things might go wrong?
Well, tiles could blow up.
Oh.
The glazes could run, they could all stick together.
Oh, well, no wonder. Now, look, they look quite different to me because you've got just plain grey and plain brown. Where's all the nice patterns?
Ah, well, we've now glazed them, and the grey and the cream you can see on here is a glaze.
So when it's been fired, the pattern will show through that glaze?
They should be lovely and brown and shiny.
And stupid question, but where's the fire going?
The fire's going in the front of the kiln down there.
All right, so it comes
Yes,
up from
and it's
underneath.
coming up from underneath, through the tiles and out of the top.
No lid on the top of the kiln?
No, no lid.
Did
Open top.
they have lids on theirs?
We don't know.
Oh, right,
We
so
don't
this is an
know.
experiment.
By the evening, spirits are running very high as they're discovering that this kiln was producing decorated floor tiles as well as roof tiles.
Now then, Mark, what do you reckon? How would you describe what we've found so far?
Peaches and cream.
Peaches and cream, okay.
It's fabulous.
Show me some of the detailed stuff.
Well, we've got a hole for this whole old clay roof tile. You see the
Okay, so
pegs
this is the pegs for the...
on the roof and so forth.
Yeah, they're quite thin.
But we've got these rather thicker floor tiles, and that one has got decoration on it.
Oh, see, that is lovely. That is a much more substantial item, isn't it?
It's the corner of fleur-de-lis, the same type of design.
Now, dating. It's medieval.
Yes, and we have a technique which will give us a date, plus or minus 25 years. It's called archaeomagnetic dating.
And when are we going to be doing that?
First, we've got to actually empty the kiln. We've actually got to take the sample from the very
Oh,
bottom
so I mean,
of the kiln.
there's a lot of work still to be done.
That's right.
And we're going to do this by Monday?
We're going to sample Sunday, and hopefully a date by Monday.
Yes.
The baby kiln's lit, and as we can't possibly have Beryl watching her kiln by night all on her own, we've all come along to lend a hand. Among all the bits of broken roof tile, large pieces of pottery are also beginning to appear. But this morning, the priority is to find the workshops and waste pits so we can understand more about what this kiln was making.
Tilers didn't have stone buildings. They had ephemeral, very, very slender wooden buildings. And when the wood decayed, it would just fill with a few tiles, inches thick, no
So
more.
we're not looking for something as
So
kind
we
of
want
big.
little rectangular buildings.
Which there's a possibility there, upslope from the kiln.
And that's where you always find the buildings.
Why?
Upslope.
Why upslope?
Well, if you're drying the tiles and things, you want to load downhill so you can get into the kiln and stack them.
Give yourself less effort.
Absolutely.
So you're standing there at the kiln and you've got rubbish and you then chuck it.
Throw it out, away, off the edge of the kiln, down slope at the bottom of the hill.
So that makes these...
More likely to be huge dumps of waste tiles.
As if Ian hasn't got enough roof tiles already. But it would be brilliant if a waster pit like this produced some floor tiles.
Jim, I brought you the fines tray because I wanted to show you something.
Great.
This is a pot that's come out where they're digging the kiln. Look at that.
Wow,
you can
look at
actually
those,
see
yes.
the thumbprints of the person who made this pot. Now, presumably, it would have just gone round like this?
No, this has been pulled this way. You can see where it's been dragged. There's probably a crease mark just on the underside there.
Oh, from the finger?
From this crease of your finger there, so you've pulled it towards you and folded it backwards.
Isn't it wonderful? You can actually feel the person who
That's
made
it,
this
you've
pot.
got
They
that
kind of
there.
live on in this thing.
We've
So
got
it's
something-
decoration, is it?
Yes, and function. It's really because the pot would have a slightly rounded bottom, so it gives it that bit more stability on the table there. Similar to this one here, if you tip that back.
Be careful. Now, this was found at a previous excavation, wasn't it?
That's right, but you can see the similar pie crusting and thumbing at the base there, doing the same job.
Mark, is this what we've been looking for?
What's that? That's a floor tile, isn't it? And it's got slip on it. It's no design, but that's a waster floor tile. Where have you got it from?
It's just coming out of this gravelly layer.
So it's in the waster pit?
Yep, in with all the roof tile and all the rubbish.
So we've got lots of roof tile and some floor tile.
Yeah, looks like
Another
two
bit there.
pieces. Yeah.
So they must be making floor tile in the kiln.
Yeah.
How old is this stuff?
1300 plus or minus.
So it's about 700 years old.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to take all this stuff, wash all of it, bag it, and stick it in a museum.
I think if we did, we wouldn't be very popular. The basements of all the museums of Britain would be creaking if we did all that. And if you get some perspective, this is from one little hole, or one layer in one little hole. This entire field is this deep in tiles. We sample the best bits, the nice tiles and so forth.
So what does it represent? Why is there so much waste here on this site?
Well, it's a massive industry. Thousands and thousands of tiles are being produced every year.
And before that, before this kind of industry started, what was tile making? Where'd you get your tiles from?
Well, it was a totally different organisation. What you'd have is itinerant tilers who'd wander around, knock at the abbey door and say, you know, oi, where's the prior? Do you want a new floor for your new church? And he said, well, he'd show his stamps and set up a kiln just outside and would do the tile floor, and then we'll move on to the next one.
But this is a different scale. This is mass production.
This is mass production, centralised in one place, distributed all over East Kent, some in West Kent, Sussex, Essex, some even reached London. But the medieval world wasn't peasants living in a field, never talking to somebody else, but actually was an open place. Communications were relatively free and easy. Things actually happened. Things moved over the landscape.
So it wasn't as dark and dismal as perhaps everybody thinks it was.
Not really.
Our baby kiln has reached over 600 degrees and the patterns are beginning to develop. We've started to clear the rubble from the throat of the medieval furnace, but the big news is the firing chamber appears to be intact.
Below me, there's a series of voids, slots running down into the base of the kiln, a series of arches.
You're standing on the arches?
I'm actually standing on the... That's why I'm sort of not moving very much, because it's actually extremely delicate archaeology I'm standing on.
And how deep are we talking about going down there?
I've got a tape. I'll just have a look.
Now, Mark, has this been found before? Has this been seen before, this amount of superstructure in the kiln?
Put quite simply, I think we may have found the best preserved medieval floor tile kiln in Britain. No one has ever found anything as good as this.
Fantastic. What are we looking at?
It's looking at there's a little bit of dirt in the bottom there, but it feels I'm pretty close to the bottom. That's over 2 feet deep.
So that's where the fire would have been, and the tiles would have rested on the top, and the heat would have come up.
Yeah.
Like
What would happen? The fire would have been down that end. It would
Right.
have come this way through the arches, and as the heat comes through the arches, it would then percolate up through the slots.
Exactly the same principle as the little kiln that we've
Absolutely.
been making. So now what? Going to dig the whole thing out, or what?
The archaeomagnetic dating's underway. We should be able to tell within a few hours just when this tile kiln was last fired by comparing the magnetic properties of these samples to a historical record of magnetic north.
What's happened here, Beryl? Those are bulbs.
We've overfired it.
But Beryl's got a problem with the baby kiln. It got too hot, and many of the tiles have been wasted.
Beryl, we were looking for 60%. How many do you think you have got?
Oh, about 25% at the moment.
But a good 25.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
We'll find out later if they've got enough tiles to make a pavement.
Come and have a look at this. Jim, You're in potter's heaven, aren't you?
Oh, yes.
Look at this clay. This is the stuff they would have actually just been taken out and make it straight into pots?
Straight into the pots.
It's fantastic. Right, well, you make me a pot. I'll see you in a minute.
Okay.
All right, Mick. And you've also been doing a bit of, well, Heath Robinson work this morning. You didn't know the secret of archaeology was in my handbag, did you?
Your compact mirror, Sandy. Well, you've come at the critical moment.
Now, you've rigged a light down in there
That's
so that
right.
you can see.
And I hope that we can go down. So if I'm looking here...
What do
my
you
God,
see?
Wonderful things. I can see the arches right at the bottom.
So the fire would have been in the very big arch just down here,
Yeah.
and then the gases would have sprayed out like that.
Nice and evenly.
Nice and evenly, and making a lovely...
Decently proper kiln.
It's the most beautiful piece of engineering, though, isn't it?
It's fantastic.
Don't you think that's...
It really is.
Especially as
So how and why did they build arches? Beryl's kiln builders showed us.
Right, now then, boys, I've got here a nearly complete tile we've actually found on this site, and these are the sort of 15th century ones that you're using. Now, they're quite heavy. What is the theory behind building the arch? Can you explain it to me?
It's to give you strength over an opening,
Yeah.
which, of course, they couldn't use lintels in the 700 years ago, so they had to build an arch. An arch, obviously, is the strongest method of supporting...
So they'd have built a form like
things
this,
above it, yes.
and then layered them up like this?
Yes.
Is it going to work?
Hope so.
When should I come back?
Maybe about half an hour. Thank you.
So we have really got a huge industrial site here, spreading really far across this field.
dozens and dozens of kilns, probably, in the end.
Why did it come to an end?
Well, in the 15th century, there was a burgeoning trade with the Low Countries, wool and cloth and so forth. The ships came back empty, and they needed ballast. Bricks and tiles are the ideal thing, so they could get cheap imports. They cut out the local industry.
So people are thinking, I'm not going to go up Tyler Hill and get those expensive tiles, I'll get the cheaper ones.
From Flanders, absolutely.
Chris and John, it looks fantastic. I still don't quite understand it. What is holding the thing up when you take that wooden piece out?
Well, hopefully the keystone in the centre.
Go for it. I'm very nervous. Dun, 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 dun. Fantastic!
With the help of a very small camera, we've now got pictures of the medieval firing chamber, open to the fresh air for the first time in 700 years. The medieval tilers themselves would never have seen this view. From the archaeomagnetic dating, we now know that the last fire in this kiln went out in the middle of the 13th century, nearly 100 years after Thomas à Becket's death.
What we've actually got here is the very last, a tile from the very last firing of the kiln. It's actually melted into one of the cracks between the arches. If I just take this piece out here, which is loose, you can actually see the way it's melted and bent.
For over 700 years, this extraordinary structure has remained intact just under the surface of Tyler Hill, waiting for our discovery. Join us in part 3 as we look for the very first Franciscan friary in Britain. The final part of our 3-day pilgrimage brings us to the heart of medieval Canterbury. We're looking for the very first Franciscan friary in Britain, established in the 13th century on the direct instruction of St Francis of Assisi. Our first discovery was some film of a local archaeologist, Louise Millard, who unearthed the lost stones of Grey Friars in 1972 while searching for Iron Age and Roman remains. Her excavations revealed huge sections of cloister, but it's not clear from her records how these relate to the friary itself. Our own quest begins in this small public park by the River Stour.
So look, that's the resistance plot. You can ignore these are just the modern park paths. Right. But we've got some really nice wall anomalies, particularly at the far end of the site there.
This is looking very good at this end. I think the last stage of Millard's excavations are the most difficult to tie in, and it's the most complex bit on the geophys.
So that's where we start?
I think that makes a lot of sense, yeah.
Our target for the 3 days is to find as many of the 13th century friary buildings as we can, and to come up with enough information to make an accurate virtual reconstruction of Grey Friars. By lunchtime, things are looking clearer.
Barney.
I think I know where we are.
Like Canterbury, mate.
Yes, thanks a lot, yeah. But seriously,
yeah.
Here's our trench, right about
Sorry, it's a bit thick.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah.
And you see those blue lines?
Yeah.
Well, I reckon we've got that little blue corner there of Millard's excavations.
Ah, right.
So I think what we've got is the cloister.
Yeah.
Now, what that means is that we might be able to explore what kind of a cloister it is that goes with this friary.
Yeah, you see, because I would expect, I mean, if we've got the chancel, which is the bit with the altar in which the friars used,
yeah.
The nave where the sort of locals came in for preaching, to be preached to and so on, would be something like that.
Yeah.
I would expect the cloister either to be bang up against that, so a square attached to the church, or one of these where there's a gap, a lane, like that.
So slightly detached from
So
the church.
slightly detached from it, and so the relationship of that wall that you've got to the church seems to me absolutely critical.
Yeah.
So in Trench 1, we've found Millard's excavations under protective plastic. And further down, we've also got the tiled floor of the 13th century cloister.
What you've actually got here very clearly now is a long passage. This is typical of that sort of period, and I think it'll run straight up and through to a door into the nave of the church.
Now, do we want to put the trench in across the wall so we get more of the tiled floor? Get more of the other side?
We need the wall to make sure that the line goes through.
Yes.
We need the tile floor to prove that it's a cloister, and then we want to find out what that anomaly was to see if it is the south wall of the church or the back of the cloister.
When we first found this floor, we thought it was just a red tiled floor because there didn't seem to be anything on it. But now we've cleaned them up, we can see it's actually a black and white checkerboard pattern. That one's got black glaze on it. That's white there. That one's black. That's white. That's black. That one's white. Completely transforms your image of what the cloister would look like.
Trench 2 was opened earlier this morning in the grounds of a medieval hospital next door. We want to find the north chancel wall of the Friary church, but by evening, no wall's been seen.
And that's the end over on the right.
Jenny, got any finds?
Hi. We've had loads and loads of finds. I think this is one of the best, though. It's a bone knife handle.
Oh, it's beautiful, isn't it?
It
What sort of
is.
period?
It's towards the end of the friary. One of the last friars who lived here might have used that.
Each friar would have had his own personal knife for cutting up his bread and his cheese and so on. And we know they had instructions to keep them clean so they didn't contaminate anybody else's food. So every one of them would have had a knife like that.
What's that?
Also, there's a book clasp, about the same date as that.
Well, things are coming up, aren't they?
They really are, and I think most excitingly we've got our first bit of 13th century pot, so that takes us right back to the start of the friary.
Over the river is Binnywith Island, and we believe it's here that the first friars settled, probably in simple wooden buildings. Mick's got the geophysics results.
It doesn't look particularly archaeological to me.
Well, it's a bit confused, but I think there's some good wall foundations possibly in there.
So what would you suggest that we do?
I think a trench across that sort of area.
So high and low resistance and see what it...
I mean, it's just possible they're garden paths and so on,
yeah.
but we need to investigate that.
Tim, I've been looking into the archival evidence for this as the site of the first friary. And as far as I can see, Thomas of Eccleston's Chronicle describes their arrival in great detail in 1224 and how they were put up at the poor priest's hospital behind us. But he doesn't seem to give any indication of where that first friary was built.
That is the great blank in the middle, because the Poor Priest's Hospital, where the museum is now, we know in great detail. We excavated the whole of it about 15, 20 years ago. We know the old stone house, the early 13th century hospital, so we know precisely where the friars actually came to in 1224. This ground belonged to the Poor Priest's Hospital, so it would also be logical to allow them to build their first little church in this ground, but that's really all we can say.
So if it's going to be solved, it's going to be by archaeology rather than history.
Archaeology only, exactly right, yep.
It'll be tough finding wooden post holes in this old marsh.
I don't feel too convinced.
They're also puzzled in the cloisters.
The real worry, of course, is that we thought in this trench we would have the big wall coming through here, the south side of the nave, or a big robber trench where it had been. And while this is very nice, I mean, there's all sorts of little architectural details here, aren't there?
Yeah, window there into a basement and undercroft.
That's what that is it going that way? Right. I think we've really got to come this way in order to see if it's running through here somewhere. Otherwise, we haven't got a nave of a church,
It's
have we?
critical to find the church, isn't it?
The end of day 2 and 5 trenches are open, but Greyfriars is still hiding most of her 13th century clues. Mick's very unhappy.
Well, we've had a right day trying to sort this
You've
out.
had a rotten day, haven't you?
Well, I have had a rotten day altogether. Earlier this afternoon, I was really worried whether we were going to end any of the walls of this building at all. We've got a wall across the back, and we know that they found one over here, which is marked by that yellow line there.
This yellow line along here, right?
But
yeah.
over this side, we just had this later brick wall, and they've been struggling all day, but luckily now we've got a big metre-wide medieval wall at the bottom.
That's certainly a wall, isn't it?
So that is the north side of the church. So I think we're OK with this bit of it.
Right.
But it was a bit of a struggle, I'll tell you, earlier on. We've got a little trench going on in the corner where Jenny is, and we've got
That's
our
a
first
sweet little
human
trench.
bone from there.
Have you? Oh, let's have a look.
Yeah, we think it's somebody's toe.
A toe bone. So, Mick, does that mean burials?
Yeah, this would have been the favoured place. If you wanted to be buried in amongst the Friars' Church, then this is where you wanted to be, right amongst the choir stalls with the services going on round you.
Only one day left to piece together the Friary Church, and that means finding the nave. The hunt for where the friars first settled is going on apace on Binnywydd Island. Yesterday, this was the trench where we had sweet Fanny Adams. What have we got today?
No, it's really exciting now. We've got a whole series of surfaces. The earliest one is that chalk one, and then above it is a cobbled layer. And on top of those cobbles, there's this fantastic piece of pottery.
Oh, isn't this fantastic?
Which dates from the 15th, early 16th century. So
we're right at the end of the life of this part of the friary then, aren't we?
Yep.
But we don't actually know that it's here.
No, but this is very good evidence. We've actually got structural stuff here now, so we need to carry on down in the remaining time, don't we? If we just keep our fingers crossed, you might get post holes, pits, that sort of thing.
All along, Mick and Barney have assumed that the nave of the church was wider than the chancel by the width of an aisle. Now more tiles have come up in this extension, and it means we're still in the cloister. So where's the nave? We've got 5 hours or so to go, and Raysan, you were panicking about an hour ago. Are you still panicking?
A little bit, yeah.
What's the problem?
No, I think it's okay.
Oh, you always say that.
No, I think it's all right.
What haven't you got that you need?
It's the junction there between the nave and the cloisters.
Yeah, well, we'll be able to give you that after lunch.
Brilliant.
But not yet.
Mick's optimism is based on a 6th trench just the other side of the fence, but in line with the chancel wall. If he's right, it'll prove that the nave and the chancel are, most unusually, the same width. Throughout our last day here in Greyfriars, we've been watched by one of the modern-day friars who lives in Canterbury.
The Franciscans came over here at the direct command of St. Francis of Assisi.
He was still alive at the time?
He was still alive. This was in 1224, and he also, it was the year in which St. Francis had the stigmata, which are the marks of Christ's wounds on his, St. Francis' body.
And what was his purpose in bringing them over here?
His purpose was to spread the good news of the gospel in a Franciscan manner, in a Franciscan way, with joy, with cheerfulness. You rarely meet a Franciscan friar that's miserable.
How did they live?
Well, they lived very frugal lives. They lived with the moral poverty, chastity and obedience. The 3 knots denote that, you know.
And this was a pretty grim place to start with, wasn't it?
Awful.
And all over the country, were they living in fairly awful places?
Well, this is the first one. This is the first Franciscan friary, and I personally am privileged to be here.
6 trenches, a lot of head scratching, and absolutely mounds of fines still being washed, and a big puzzle. I swear Mick's gone greyer, even if I haven't. But we think we've sorted it out now, don't we?
I think we have, yeah. I mean, I think we know where the buildings are. And I think the best way to explain it to you is you imagine that you're a novice and I'm the prior and you're living here.
Right, where am I right now?
We're somewhere in the south cloister here now, and this is where the washing place would be, where we'd wash our hands and face.
Is that the lavatorium?
Very good.
Thank you.
Before, when we come into the refectory, which is where we'd have sat and ate our meal, probably along the south range, using the knives that Jenny was finding, little bowls and so on. We then go from there, we walk up this corridor, which we've got the tiles for down there, and we've got them in here. There's a big building on the West Range here, which may be the prior's house, it may be where the guests come and so on. But it's over on that side, and then we come round on the north cloister alley through here, with the church above us here.
Massive church here.
And we just take a little diversion here, Tony, through this gate into the school grounds, because we think we finally sorted out the wall of the nave here.
Oh, great. Oh, Brother Barney's got a woman with him.
I've come to hear him preach.
All right, shameless hussy, what have we got?
We've got the south wall of the nave, definitely. And it's right here. You can see the cut. There's not much left of it. It's all been robbed away in the 17th century.
Where we're going to now is the chancel end, where the friars would have had their own services.
Truth! Yes.
And between the two bits of the church, there is this walkway.
Oh, now, I know about this. This is actually a real medieval walkway, isn't it? And this alley, which just looks like everybody's back alley, just respects the old boundary.
That's right. The nave is on the left, where the population come in, but our bit is on the right. And we would have gone in, probably not through this door, but that one there, into the chancel, which runs out in front of us. Jenny's actually in the doorway there. You can see the bottom of the column, look. She's down at that sort of level.
Brother Jenny, what have you got?
Well, we've found the floor level in the chancel, so we know where the floor of the church was, and then I've gone straight on down through into the medieval foundations.
And have you had any finds?
Not really. Most of it's been robbed out in the post-medieval period.
Our last call is to Binnywydd Island. Friar Robin, now this is a proper friar.
Thank you, Tony.
Far too much fry up. And Katie, what have we had down here?
Well, we've gone through all the cobbled area, which now we've hit a whole load of occupation layers, which have got
finally,
lovely,
this is the moment.
13th century pottery.
Wow.
13th century, so we're there.
This is the right sort of date for the beginning of the friary,
But we have no walls or anything related.
But they're not far away with this sort of stuff.
Have we done what we set out to do?
I think we have. I mean, this was always going to be a long shot, finding structures here. And remember, I said right at the beginning, we'd be very lucky if we found post holes or timber slots or whatever. I don't think we actually reckoned with the depth of stratification here, did we?
No, and there's still an awful lot to go as well.
And what this has told, certainly the local archaeologists, is there's a hell of a lot of archaeology here in what appears to be just a blank space. So they're really pleased with this, even though it's a rather grubby-looking hole. What the view is today.
Ray Sand's now ready to show us his 3D virtual reconstruction, superimposed over our live pictures.
Yeah, that's the view over the cloister, and there it is with the buildings at the back.
Isn't that great?
Our building on the west-hand side with the tiles and probably a pentis or something on the right.
What about the river site where our little chapel is? Have we got anything there?
we got the there's that
there they
look
are.
with the excavations at the back.
And let's see what happens if you put
there's the
graphic in. That's great.
So it really shows you the bulk of the
buildings. Can we move round that now? Is that possible?
Yep, we'll just get
Oh yes. Yeah.
This is the one you were terrified you wouldn't be able to do in time, Ray Sand. You're just a panicker. I trusted you. I knew you'd be able to do it. That's great, isn't it? And what about Binnywydd? Binnywydd Island?
We've got a view from Binnywydd excavations with the little building over the stream. And there's our church. Look.
Now, can we see it all together?
So there's the east end of the church, look, with the little building over the stream.
Yeah.
Up over the cloisters. And then we're looking down over the whole Friary complex on its island with the streams around it, the whole complex.
Excellent. Well done, all of you. Beryl Hines and her team have rescued just about enough tiles to make a small pavement, even if it's not a pattern. We're going to present this to the headmaster of St Peter's School. We've had a wonderful 3 days in Canterbury. We found the first Franciscan friary in Britain and uncovered a remarkable tile kiln on Tyler Hill. We might even have caught a glimpse of the Roman temple. Andrew. Andrew's the headmaster of the school who've looked after us wonderfully. Thank you. Thank you, children, for all the pot washing you've done. Thank you, all the local people. And thank you, all the diggers, especially. We'd like to give you this little pavement as a memory of us being here.
Well, thank you all very much indeed. Thank you.